Braves TV color analyst CJ Nitkowski joins the show today. We're going to cover everything from the first half of the 2025 season for the Atlanta Braves and look forward to the second half and what you can be watching. All that on today's episode of Locked On Braves. So let's get into it.
You are Locked On Braves, your daily Atlanta Braves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, and welcome back to Locked On Braves, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, where we cover your favorite Atlanta sports teams each and every day. I am your host, Jake Mastriani. You can follow me on social media at shortstopball. Check out the podcast there at LockedOn_Braves on X and Locked On Braves on Instagram. If you're new and you're watching this on YouTube, please do me a huge favor. Hit that subscribe button, hit the thumbs up button, and leave me a comment down below. And if you're listening on the audio version, you can help out as well. Just leave me a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. It doesn't take you that long to do it, and it helps me out a ton whenever you do take the time to do that. So thank you so much for all your support here at Locked On Braves. To all my everydayers out there, had somebody in the comment section tell me that they're very close to becoming an everydayer. Hopefully this is the episode that puts them over the top, and it is a great episode. Had a conversation with CJ Nitkowski. We'll cover everything from the first half of the 2025 season, look ahead for the second half as well. So looking forward to you getting a chance to hear my conversation with him on today's episode of Locked On Braves, which is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Well, like I said, today's episode will be my conversation with Braves TV color analyst CJ Nitkowski, also hosts a show on MLB Network. So make sure you go check him out, follow him on social media where he's a great follow as well. I'm sure you're already doing that, but I can't wait for you to get a listen to my conversation with CJ. So here it is. All right. Well, on today's show is CJ Nitkowski. CJ, thank you so much for coming on the show. This means so much to me. Obviously, have loved having you as part of the Braves broadcast team, although I will say the Braves offense has gone backwards ever since you joined the team. I don't know what you have to do with that or not, but either way, you've been a great addition to the booth.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, Jake, and good to spend some time with you. We actually blame on the television crew Andrew Greathouse, who took over as director the same year that I joined. So we're kind of looking at the two new guys and figuring out who can we blame for what has happened, and it turns out to be our director. It's really his fault.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll stop blaming you from now on. But like I said, it is a pleasure having you and both Brandon. He's done a fantastic job since taking over that role too. But you guys make the games interesting. And in one game in particular, and I believe this was one of the blowouts the Braves have had this year. Not that they've had too many close losses, but the game when Frenchie is in the booth, and something that I can very much relate to is the spelling of your last name. That's been one of the best moments, I think, on the Braves broadcast this year, because with the last name of Mastriani, I get that all the time. So I thought that was quite hilarious. And you didn't know that until that point in the broadcast?
No. So what happened was we had rain delays, right? And so the best part of this is that it all started, and I'm not a name dropper, but it all started with John Smoltz. So John Smoltz texted me and Frenchie. And I guess at that point, Paul Burt had already done a non-camera hit, but then we had gone to a rain delay. And he said, tell Birdie, he texted us to me and Frenchie, tell Birdie to stay away from the tanning booth because he just felt like he looked a little bit tan. Now, Birdie lives not too far from me, and he's got a farm, and he's out there all the time, and so he's in the sun quite a bit. But it was kind of funny, and his hair is really light, so he did look a little extra tan. So we're going back and forth, and just me and John, and we're kind of making some dumb jokes and making fun of Birdie. And then I realized Frenchie was not in the booth at the time. And I look over and I see his phone over there. And then I look again. And, when you got a group text message, if you haven't named the group, it's just going to have the names. Well, it happened to be that my name was the one at the front. And then I looked over and I was like, holy cow. Like, I've seen a lot of different spellings and seen my name botched quite a bit, which I'm sure, as you mentioned, you're familiar with as well. But I don't think I've ever seen it that bad. And so I just took a little screenshot of it. I sent it to our producer, Gretchen. I was like, hey, if this game goes sideways, this might be something we can use later. And it went pretty sideways. And so we had some fun with it.
Yeah, no, that was pretty hilarious. Like I said, I can relate. I guess the other, while we're on kind of the best broadcast moments of the first half, the other one, because you mentioned Birdie, made me think about when the usher sent him outside of the stadium to go to the restroom. I thought that was pretty hilarious as well. Yeah. But you guys seem like you have a great job and some great synergy there together.
It's a good group. I love this industry, and I've been in it now for, I think it's about 13 years, and just studying the business and how it works and everything else of what makes a good broadcast and a good broadcast team, and getting good people together, right? There's a ton of egos in this business, in this industry. I've been fortunate starting at MLB.com and then Fox and then the Rangers and here to be around really good people, people that are good teammates, that understand this is a tough job. We're under a lot of pressure. Yes, we're out there to have fun and it's awesome, but at the same time, you got work to do. And so to be supportive of each other, but also to be able to crack jokes. Like, it's one of the first things I told Brandon when I met him. I was like, listen, man, don't ever be afraid. Like, you're never going to hurt my feelings. You're never going to make me feel bad. I know what my career was. Have as much fun with it as you want, man. There's no ego here. I said, I messed something up. Correct me. Right. I did a game with Wiley recently, and we were in St. Louis, and I had messed up that, and I forgot who it was already. Sonny Gray. I was saying that Sonny Gray was from Alabama and he's from Tennessee. And I didn't realize that till later. I told Wiley, he's like, I don't want to correct you. I'm like, dude, correct me. I said, I'd rather be right. Let's have some fun, man. Ego aside, we got to get this thing right, even if it's a small detail. And so we have that kind of group, and it's a blast going to work every day. Obviously, the better your team is, the more fun it is. But I think the feedback of that broadcast in particular you're talking about, when it was a blowout, but we had fun, kept people engaged, right? That's when you get challenged a little bit. I called a lot of bad baseball in Texas. That team was like 120 something games under 500 my first 6 years there. And then they won a World Series. But that's practice to find out how good you really are, especially pre-pitch clock days. It was brutal. Yeah. So I could talk broadcasting all day long because I do love the industry, but I'm grateful for the group we have.
Yeah, we're grateful too. I mean, I grew up in the 90s. So, I mean, the Braves had great broadcast teams back then, growing up on Skip and Pete and all of those guys. So it's good to kind of see that tradition continue with you and Brandon and obviously Ben and what they're doing on the radio side too. Braves fans have been very, very fortunate in that. Like you said, unfortunately, getting to the things happening on the field hasn't been the first half of the season that the Atlanta Braves have wanted. 11 games under 500 going into the All-Star break. And for me, CJ, the biggest reason for that, and obviously there's a lot to go into it, but just a lack of offense. Last year you had the injuries as an excuse, and it was a legitimate excuse. They got ravaged by injuries last season. But coming into this year, outside of Acuna, you felt like everybody's healthy coming back. Riley and Ozzie and Sean Murphy all coming back healthy. You felt like this was going to be the offense, maybe not to 2023 degrees, but even before that, people say that all the time, that 2023 was a fluke, and they were good offense before 2023 too. And it feels like the same thing, if not worse, even for this offense this year. So again, I'm assuming you kind of agree, but what, I guess, are your biggest takeaways from the Braves' sluggish start in the first half?
Yeah, there have been some surprises in that regard. There's no two ways about it. I'd say, first of all, starting with Profar and the PED suspension, that crushed us, right, to start the year, because we knew Ronald wasn't going to be back for maybe somewhere around 6 weeks, is kind of what we thought, early May. Not exactly sure when it was going to be, but we figured Profar could slide into that leadoff spot. He had been really good there, especially recently. But you had all kinds of flexibility, left, right, with him obviously being a switch hitter. That was devastating. There's no two ways about it. Now you don't have him. You don't have Ronald to start the year. And while I'm with you that 2023 wasn't just it didn't come out of nowhere, it was also historic. So you can't expect those levels. But you already saw a little bit of a step back to some degree last year. Matt Olson had a bad luck start to his season. I know you talked about it. I watched you early on. By the way, you do great work covering the team. And so there's nothing you can do about that. And he's not the only guy. I think we saw a little bit of inconsistency from Austin Riley. Still good, but I know we have really high expectations for him. But those were the least kind of the worries. Drake Baldwin had the worst luck of anybody to start the season. No Sean Murphy to start the season. That one hurt. But I think it's what's kind of happened at the bottom of the order that has been the real issue, right? We've seen Ozzie kind of go through it here a little bit. And just when I feel like he's coming out of it, then we start to see maybe him slide back a little bit. The biggest thing for me with him, obviously batting against left-handed pitching where he's always been so dominant, I hadn't been there. I feel like we're seeing more pop-ups than we usually see from him. I don't know if his swing is getting big, but it seems like it hadn't been his level. Then there was times where he was getting kind of back to level and he looked really good, but it's been in and out. Michael, I know it's been a big problem. There's no hiding from it. I think with Michael, I sit there and I try to study as much of the data as I can. I'm a pitcher, but we talk hitting. I like to think I know a decent enough amount to be able to bring it to a broadcast. There's no hiding that the chase is an issue for him, and it's kind of creeped up. It's always been high, But I think Michael's Chase in particular, where both he and Ozzie are not having the same results on pitches outside of the zone. Right? We always talk about a guy like Vladimir Guerrero Sr., and others that could cover outside. Jacob Wilson with the A's swings at everything outside of the zone, but he gets hits. And for a while, Michael and Ozzie were doing that. There just have not been the results of the pitches outside the zone. And so then you say, well, you got to chase less all of a sudden. Well, that's a big change for guys if that's not who they have been. And I'll defend Nick Allen all day long in the way that I defended Orlando at the beginning and in the offseason. If you can give me plus defense at short, I can live with any other offense as long as everybody else does their job. So I do think at the bottom had been kind of one of the bigger issues in what we have seen. And at times you start to see guys come out of it, but it hasn't been consistent enough.
Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to the ball game with friends and family? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Gametime comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last minute tickets without all the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. Gametime makes it all possible. Gametime makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to first pitch. And they've got incredible last minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. Gametime is the official ticketing partner of Locked On MLB, making it easy to browse the app for an exciting upcoming Braves game in the second half of the season. They might be even cheaper in the second half of the season. They'll obviously be cheaper on Gametime when you have last-minute tickets, zone deals for big savings. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app today. Create an account. Use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Download the Gametime app. Create an account. Use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Yeah, a couple of things on the offense before we move off of this. One, Tim Hyers has taken a lot of heat coming on this year. Obviously, we, and fans in general, we don't get to see exactly the everyday. You're a little bit closer to it than we are. It looks like, and you can look at some of the data and you can see that the Braves hitters just in general are being more patient this year, where in the past has been a very aggressive approach from them. That, and just what else have you seen from Tim Hyers that he's trying to implement into this team? And could that be causing some of the confusion for hitters just trying to make those adjustments?
So I've known Tim for a long time. We were teammates back in 1996 with the Toledo Mud Hens and the Detroit Tigers. So you may not get the most objective. You're going to get a guy who's a huge Tim Hyers fan. And then saw what he did. We reconnected when he was working with the Red Sox and then eventually the Dodgers. And then he got the Rangers job when I was there, and obviously did some really good work. The one thing we never completely know, and I'm very careful about the questions I ask him because I never want to put him in a spot that he's uncomfortable because of our previous, relationship as teammates. And so I've never asked him this question, but you never know who's working with the hitting coaches and who isn't, right? So it's a whole slew of new hitting coaches. I'll give you an example. In Texas, Corey Seager did not use his hitting coaches and doesn't. He has his own guy, and this has become a little bit more common where guys are being coached remotely from their own hitting coaches. So I don't know. So you might look at a guy and be like, man, what did Tim do to this guy? Tim might not be working with that guy. That's just kind of the reality of the modern game. I don't know if that's the case with any of our guys. Again, I don't ask them that because I almost don't want to know because I don't have to ever answer that question. But that's one thing to keep in mind. The other thing is the patience, you're right, is there, right? And so that's usually a first step. You like to see walks go up, but then not too much else change as far as offensive production goes, right? There's times where we'll look at guys where they cut their strikeout rate down, but they don't lose power in the process, which is always a good thing, right? There's certain kind of things that you look for to be able to work together. I don't think that you get a hitting coach that comes in 2025, one especially who's had as much success as he has had, and all of a sudden guys are flustered by the way he's doing things and it's getting them locked up at the plate. I just don't think it happens because these are big league hitters that have been at it for a long time and have a way that they do things, right? I don't think the first year for Sean Murphy and I'm just using him as an example, but with Tim Hyers, that all of a sudden he's like, okay, now how do you want me to hit? He's been hugely successful throughout the course of his career, just like Matt Olson has, just like Ronald has, just like Austin had, right? These guys have already done really big things. Your coaches are there now, and that's why there's three of them, to assist, to give you information. And maybe I think that's part of it, trying to get a little bit more updated on how you bring information to the table. And then guys do with it what they want from there. I did ask him in spring training when I think Spencer was, no, it could have been Spencer. Somebody was throwing against, it was Schwellenbach was throwing against our hitters in kind of like a little inner squad type of controlled setting down in Northport. And I saw he had paperwork and he's talking to guys. And I said, it's Spencer Schwellenbach. What are you telling them? And he said, I'm getting them prepared for what it's going to look like during the season. So they understand what kind of information is coming their way, what they need to know, even though it's our own guy. And then from there, it's up to you. I've had this conversation with many hitting coaches about the data age and how you handle it. And a lot of them will tell us, we'll prepare you the best we can. We're going to tell you what this guy's going to do. It's up to you whether or not you can make the adjustments or you're willing to make the adjustments. As an example, Justin Verlander, when Justin Verlander is right with his high vert fastball, right, living at the top of the zone, maybe not blowing you away with big time velocity, but that fastball is going to have some high ride to it. They'll tell guys that have uppercuts in their swings. I'm not saying Tim Hyers, just in general, these conversations go this way. Hey, your regular swing is not going to work against this guy. You're going to be up under the fastball, and there's going to be a lot of swing and miss. So your adjustment here is to get your hands above the ball and try to level out that swing. Can't make you do it. I'm just telling you, if you want to be successful today, this is the way you're going to have to go about it. And whether guys take that information and go with it or not is more on the player than it is on the hitting coaches.
Yeah, that's great insight. Thank you so much for sharing that. The other thing I wanted to talk about too, because I feel like, and I know you've mentioned this on the broadcast too, so I'm hoping maybe you have a little bit more insight on it. This can't be the whole reason, and it certainly can't be the full excuse. But baseballs are not traveling as much as they are, especially not in 2023, but before. The data out there in Baseball Savant shows that there's more drag now on the baseball. You're seeing teams where there's only 2 teams in all of baseball that their slug is higher than their X slug, which is, not common anyway, but, and that's the A's and the Reds, who play in pretty hitter friendly ballparks too. You look at a team like the Mets, their actual slug is 52 points lower than their expected slug. And, the Braves obviously is much lower than their actual 2, but not even as high as some others. I mean, clearly there is more drag on the baseball, and baseballs are flying less. Any more data or any more insight that you've had in your research of this?
Not really. I just look at the distances, right? Or like you said, those expected numbers and what are the differences. Now, most fans don't want to hear it, right? As far as during a losing season, if it's not going well. So we're always careful about how we do those things, right? At the end of the day, I try to be objective, but I also want fans to be excited about this team. I want to give them reasons to rally behind the team. And so we'll share some of those bad luck kind of numbers that are going their way. But, I got to take baseball at their word. I believe it was Rob Manfred who had a direct quote about this, but just saying they don't have a reason. They don't know why the balls have been different this year. I'd like to think that they're being honest with us. I noticed it last year. Right? I brought it up last year. There was times where we were significantly shorter. It seemed like when you looked at very similar exit velocities and launch angles and how far those baseballs were traveling. I don't think there's any intent here because baseball wants more offense. I just noticed today, I was on my radio show, that there's 3 teams that are tied for first place in batting average right now. And I know batting average doesn't tell you everything, but it's just interesting to me at 258. And as I scrolled through, I don't think we've had a team get through an entire season and be first in baseball with a batting average under 260. Right. So I grew up my era when I was pitching, I was right through the PED era. League average was 270. And 271. That was league average, right? That means you were just doing okay. Now we got a team that is leading baseball hitting 258. But the point there is that MLB wants offense, right? They certainly don't want to try to bring down the offense. They want the home runs. They want the excitement. So I don't think, again, that there's anything that they're doing intentionally to try to make this happen. It's frustrating. It could also be in conversations I've had with other people about humidors being everywhere, right? I mean, it started out where it was Colorado and some of your high elevation places, but those humidors have really slowed things down, especially in Arizona. That's when we had this conversation when we were in Arizona, because I always knew that place as a launching pad whenever I'd go through as a player. And it was a fun place to shag in the outfield because you rob homers all day long. Those numbers have come down and they feel like they've leveled out because of the humidor. So maybe we need less humidors in the baseball, the baseballs, I should say, less in those humidors. Perhaps it helps, but it's frustrating. I feel like we lead the league in yellow line doubles or balls that have hit the top of the wall and come back. It's been amazing, like a handful of them, way too many this year. And I feel like Matt Olson has been at the forefront of that.
I was about to say those first couple of weeks, I think Matt Olson had like 5 that were either right at the wall or even got robbed. So yeah. And it's, it's frustrating too, because this was a lineup that was built to do that. I mean, that's what this lineup was built to do, was slug. And now it feels like that's kind of been zapped a little bit. Again, can't be the full excuse, and certainly isn't the biggest one for this offense. we've talked a lot about the bad CJ. There have been some highlights from the first half. I'm going to take away some of your choices here to narrow down the list. But outside of, Matt Olson, Ronald, Sell, Schwellenbach, who's impressed you the most, maybe surprised you the most in the first half?
I'm glad you didn't say Drake Baldwin there, because that's obviously been a fun story for all of us this year. It's getting my first look in spring training, talking to Eddie Perez about him, what do you expect? We think he'll be able to hold his own catching wise. We're not sure exactly how the bat's going to play. Impressive from day one, and that's even going back to spring training. So they have a legitimate guy here who's good against lefties too, right? So you're not worried about any of the left-right stuff, and I think he continues to get better behind the plate. I love the tandem that we have. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. I know people are talking about is Sean Murphy a guy you would trade. That's a no for me, right? We got to look in St. Louis at him as DH, right? 2 of the 3 games. Perhaps we'll get a little bit more of a look at that the rest of the way, but that's kind of an exciting thought. Potentially getting them both in the lineup as much as possible. Guys have popped up in the rotation because they've had to. I think probably Grant Holmes holding it down. I know he's had a lot of bad luck as far as wins go, and much like batting average, we don't count on wins necessarily to judge what happens here with starting pitchers. His spin is really good, and people around the league talk about his spin. When you talk to other teams and ask about him, just like they always would with Spencer Schwellenbach when he was healthy, and the adjustment that he has made. Less four-seamers, more cutters, because the four-seamer had not been great for him. Trying to find ways to get a little bit more vert on his fastball to have some ride to it, I think has been impressive to watch. He's really held his own. My thought when the season was almost getting ready to get started, we were in spring training, I'm like, sure, Grant might be able to help out in the rotation, but boy, he'd be deadly in the bullpen. And I think you need him based on some of the pieces that we had lost with Joe Jimenez and A.J. Minter. But he has proven that he is a regular starter in the big leagues. And his journey, of course, is amazing with the 10 years that it took him. But he's a good starter, really good starter. Maybe a little higher in the rotation than you want him right now because of the injuries. But I think that's been a really good story. De Los Santos has been a good story. Guys emerging, and we're just starting to see, and we'll figure out whether or not it's going to last, right? But Dylan Dodd, Austin Cox, guys that are getting opportunities that maybe were not anticipated, look pretty good. And they've done some good things. I know Dylan got sent down. It's the downside of having options as a reliever, especially once you start throwing well, you prefer not to have those. But for him as a converted starter, now into the bullpen, I think they got something there, and maybe a little A.J. Minter-like, quite honestly, and having kind of the repertoire that he does. So there's been some good stories out in the bullpen as well. Drake Baldwin's probably been the biggest one, and we're keeping our fingers crossed for a Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, certainly would help out the Braves in many ways if he can get that Rookie of the Year this season. Jacob Mizorowski, who was at the All-Star game, maybe somewhat controversially, but he's right there in the running too. But hopefully, Drake Baldwin's going to get a lot of at-bats in the second half too. You mentioned he and Sean Murphy both being in there in the same lineup. Braves need him to play as much as possible, like you said, to get that Rookie of the Year and hopefully get an extra draft pick out of it too. And look, this wasn't a test, but you did nail it. I had Drake Baldwin and Grant Holmes written down as the guys that I wanted to talk about and feature there. So great job of passing that test. But I do want to talk a little bit more about Grant Holmes because I was doing my first half awards for this team. And when I was doing the first half Cy Young, I picked Chris Sale just because I think he was the best pitcher and he was looking like he was on that Cy Young trajectory, before the injury, that he was going to be in that discussion with Skeens, with Wheeler. But what Grant Holmes has done in the first half, I mean, every time out, CJ, he's giving your team a chance to win. And that means a lot to be able to get those innings out of a guy that, as you said, in spring training, we didn't know. Is he going to stick in the rotation? Kind of like Ronaldo Lopez the year before. Is he going to have to go to the bullpen? But I mean, his first appearance this year was a relief appearance. But since then, I mean, he's taken the ball. And even when he doesn't have his best stuff, some nights it feels like he's getting you through 5 innings. And that's been huge for this team in the first half.
Yeah, so this is a phrase that I've used before that's definitely getting outdated, and I got to be careful now as I get older. The next generation has no idea what you're talking about, but I refer to him as kind of a lunch pail guy, right? He makes his lunch, he goes to work, and that's it. And there's no drama. There's not a lot of conversation. He's a fantastic guy, but he's a guy of few words. He's just there to get the job done. What do you want me to do today? Be in the bullpen? You want me to be in the rotation? What he did last year at the end of the year on those back-to-back days to help get the Braves into the postseason was amazing, and he does it without any fanfare. There's no drama surrounding him. But again, going back to the adjustment, I think is the big one. We know that his slider and curveball are really good, and the fact that he has added that cutter and using it more, in exchange for the fastball, which did get hit hard. I mean, I haven't looked in the last couple of starts, but I remember it was, low 300 batting average. OPS was really high against it. Most of the damage was coming against this heater. What do you do? What kind of adjustments do you make? And those conversations, no doubt, with Craney, with Abreu, and perhaps anybody else in the analytics office to try to come to that conclusion, like how do we get guys off of this fastball, has been a really good story. So he's a fun one to watch. We have a lot of fun with the hair and everything else, but he's legit, and this is a nice find, and a lot of credit to the Braves when they signed him and put him in the minor leagues a couple of years ago, and what they have gotten out of him since. Again, at his age, to go from, I know he'd been a starter earlier, but basically started getting settled in as a reliever. We saw some starts last year, and now to be a full-time starter. No, he was working on that kick change a little bit, which I don't think has been maybe as successful as he'd like it to be, right? Spencer Strider was doing the same thing. It's kind of a fascinating phenomenon with guys that don't pronate, that can't get the ball to run. But everything else has been good. And spin plays, this is something we've talked about a little bit more on my radio show on XM lately, especially when you get to the postseason. You want to have the ability to spin the baseball. Grant Holmes does it really well. Spencer Schwellenbach does it really well. Obviously, Chris Sale and his slider. And the same thing with the slider that you get from Spencer Strider. So it's good to see guys. That velocity is one thing that gets you excited, but you got to be able to spin it. And Grant Holmes is near the top of the list of spinners.
And we like it with the marketing team too. Maybe it's there. I just haven't seen it yet, but somebody's got to sell a hat with like his locks coming out of it. We got to see that around the ballpark. I just feel like that's an easy marketing tool there for Grant Holmes, who's just become a great character and a great pitcher. For the Braves.
It's a great point. Somebody's got to get on that. Sometimes you need a suggestion here and there.
Yep. All right. I didn't leave you much time here, but I wanted to talk obviously about what's to come. We got 2.5 months left in the season, got a big trade deadline coming up. We'll see how active the Braves actually are at the deadline. I did an episode the other day giving my top 7 storylines for the second half. But CJ, what are you looking forward to the most with watching this team in the second half?
Yeah. So is there a run in there? I don't think they've won more than 4 games in a row this season, right? So the idea of getting streaky, which we've kind of been looking for the last, 6 or 7 weeks, hasn't happened. That's what it's going to take to give yourself this long shot now to make the postseason. Outside of that, when we start looking at the individuals, whatever it is that Michael's working on, that's important. I think the stretch here for him is going to be really important. I don't know if you saw that game in St. Louis where it looked like he finally had a walk. And he got rung up on a pitch that was outside the strike zone. I was like, gosh darn it, man. Of all the people to do it to, it was such a big moment because it was the 8th inning, down by 2, a couple of runners on. You had Marcel was on deck, I think, to pinch hit. Either way, I think we watched Michael really closely. He is giving you this unbelievable defense. None of that has changed, which is a good sign. But watching him the rest of the way, I think, is going to be really important. Watching Ozzie the rest of the way, right? Ozzie's got 2 more years to control, but they're option years. They're very inexpensive. But I think it's important to kind of see what he is doing as well the rest of the way. Ronald's staying healthy, which I think is not going to be a non-issue. Will we see some of that Drake Baldwin, Sean Murphy kind of combination DH like we did in St. Louis? Will be an interesting note. Joey Wentz was really good. I know it's 1 game. I want to see it. Like for these guys that have all of a sudden popped up because there's so many opportunities on the pitching side, I want to see more of it. He punches out 6, the most of a Braves reliever in his debut with the team since they've been in Atlanta. There were 6 in Milwaukee and there were 6 in Boston or 7 in Boston back in the day. But I thought that was a really good sign. And when I asked the Braves about him, there was just some underlying things they saw in the metrics that they liked, that they think there's an opportunity for him to be better. So he made a great impression in his first one. Whether or not he actually gets starts, we'll see, right? He used to be a starter. Do you want to have him as a multi-inning reliever? I'm not exactly sure. And I don't know how much you watched of the Davis Daniel game because the rain delays were brutal. He's kind of an interesting guy too. First of all, he went an 1.5 hour rain delay and went back out there. And I get it. You're in that spot where you're doing whatever you can to keep your place on the team. So yeah, I'll do it. I'll wait 90 minutes and still pitch. I did not realize this until I was watching the game. So he's 90-91. And if you're sitting there watching the game, you are not inspired by his fastball until I look over my little MLB research thing that I have open and I see 20 inches of vert on his fastball. And I got to be careful how we use that and bring it to a broadcast because it can get a little nerdy and get a little boring, and I don't want to leave our fans behind. But league average is 16. The simple point is this: that ball's got some legitimate jump on it, and that's why he's able to get 90-91 by guys. And I thought his split was pretty good. So kind of, let's just see if there's something there because I think the opportunity for some starts is probably realistic for him. I know those are more the long shot things that are going on, but those are kind of some fun storylines that I like watching with this club, and we'll get to see it over the last couple of months.
Yeah, that's great. Some of the ones that I had too, as well, especially those young pitchers. We get to see any of the other young pitchers come up. Does Hurts and Waldrop get another opportunity at some point? They got some other talented prospects down there that could get a chance in the second half with all the pitching injuries. So I think that's definitely going to be a fun one to watch. CJ, thank you so much for joining the show today. I appreciate you so much for coming on. Like I said, you and Brandon do a great job in the booth. Great work there, that whole broadcast team. So appreciate you so much for joining us today.
Jake, it was my pleasure, man. And I'm not just saying this. You do a great job. I've mentioned this before. Like, the Braves fan base has a lot of good bloggers and podcasters, and you're right near the top, man. Do good work.
Well, thank you so much. Well, I hope you all enjoyed that conversation with CJ. Thank you so much to CJ for jumping on the show. No, he's a busy person with all the shows that he's got going on, but he is truly a treat to have to listen to each and every night. Even if the Braves aren't delivering, CJ and Brandon are in the booth. So can't thank CJ enough for coming on the show. Hopefully we can have him on again in the future. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, hit the thumbs up button, leave us a comment down below, and let me know what you thought about CJ's thoughts on the Braves this season and what to look forward to. Again, make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe to the Locked On Braves podcast wherever you get your podcast, and we will talk to you next time.